This month we'll be creating felt flowers to make a reversal decoration. Hey guys, it is Gwen here from Olive & Oak, and I want to show you what is inside the September 2025 Crafters Crate subscription box kit. You're going to find this shrink wrapped piece. It's going to have a picture of one half of your project. As you can see, it's going to be a little pumpkin project, and it is going to be double-sided. We love something that works for Halloween and fall, and this is going to cover both of them for you. So the front side, of course, is going to have a little sticker of our Halloween side, and on the back here, you're going to have a sticker that has information about this kit, where to find this video, and a reminder for your discount code as a club member, because you do get 10% off all other kits, workshops, all the good stuff. If you want to come hang out with us more or craft more things, we want to give you a fun discount. So you're going to have this piece here. You're also going to have this bag that's got some pre-cut felt pieces in there, and we'll get into that in just a moment. And then your other goodie bag is going to be your paint and supplies. So this month, your paint strip has the very far end one. It's going to be our dark stain. This is a dark gray paint, purple, orange, green, and then this is our off-white. This is, we call it cold foam. It's kind of like a creamy white color. You're going to have, oops, I'm missing one of the brushes in here. You should have a blue flat brush. For your big areas, you'll have this little guy right here. We call him a ninja brush. This plastic piece is going to pop off of there, and you've got a really, really fine point brush on there that's great for small details. And then you'll have a trio of sponges. I'm going to teach you guys a little trick too, reusing these as well. And last but not least, you'll notice this month's glue is a little bit different. We have Aleene's Tacky Glue. This is going to work well at creating your felt flowers, and we'll show that as well. One thing I want to mention about this glue, when you first go to use it, it's not open on the tip, so you're going to take a pair of scissors and give it a little snip to be able to open the glue, because if not, you're going to say, why won't the glue pour? You just got to snip that little piece off. Speaking of scissors, that is going to be one of the tools you're going to want to grab for this kit. There's a couple things you're going to want to cut for your felt pieces, and so a pair of scissors are fantastic. I do not have the sharpest pair, and you don't need them either, but if you are a fabric crafter and you know that fabric scissors are special, they work great for felts as well. Now, inside your felt baggie, there are two of everything in two sets of colors, and that is because this month's kind of special piece is going to be creating these felt flowers that are so stinking cute. We're gonna make a little trio of flowers and 3 leaves that go along with it. Now, of course, you can mix and match the colors however you want, but there is one set that's definitely more of the Halloween. So you got the purple, the bright orange, the black, and then this green color. And then the other side here is going to have more of your fall colors. It has this creamy color, this mustard yellow, this sort of burnt orange, and then a slightly different color green leaf that's going to go with it. So I painted these in sort of 2 different styles. This one is definitely more playful. We've got that little black ninja brush helped me create these little details on here. And then my blue flat brush I used just kind of sideways to create these fun little lines here and there. You don't have to do this. I just got very extra with little details on the Halloween side because it's very fun. Whereas my fall side, I kept a little more neutral, a little more simple. But I will. I'm going to walk you guys through how to create each style of flower here. I will point out there's one thing you can do that make a little bit of a difference. So my fall flower, I went with thicker cuts, and this will make sense in a second, I promise. My fall flower, I went with thicker cuts, so I have a slightly different style on this flower versus this one, where I went a lot thinner. So my cuts are much closer together and created these fun little frillies. But if you've never played with felt flowers or created them, I promise you they are way easier than they look. And I'm going to walk you guys through step by step creating this fun little project. The other thing that's going to be inside there, of course, you're going to have your 3D lettering, your 3D leaves, but the other thing that's in there that looks a little funny is going to be these 2 little guys. They just slide together, oops, like this, and of course you can paint or stain these as well. These just slide together so that you can set your project in it to display, and then it's easy to flip it over when Halloween is all done to display your fall side. So let's get into crafting this kit. I think this is really fun, and I hope you guys enjoy the felt flowers. There's something we're hoping to make kind of a regular around the studio because I've kind of fallen in love with them and I'm really enjoying crafting with them. All right, let's get into crafting with our felt pieces. So I've got my Aleene's glue here, and you'll notice that the leaf kind of has a top edge and then a more rounded bottom part. We're going to use a little drop of glue down in this bottom section and just pinch it together and just apply pressure. Now I can sit here and hold it in place, but I'm gonna cheat and use a little clamp. You could use a clothespin, you could use really anything that's got some weight that'll hold it together, or like I said, you could hold it in place too. I'm gonna do that with all 3 of my little leaves. It just takes a little drop. And all this is really doing is just creating some dimension with our leaves so that they're not so flat when we put them into our project. You could also, if you didn't want to use the aliens, you could use a hot glue gun. Hot glue works great for this as well. They're just a little tricky to pack into subscription boxes, so we went with the aliens that I could put into here. Just put my last little drop on here, and all I'm doing is just kind of pinching that little part. I'm not folding the whole leaf in half, just enough to give that some hold, and like I said, kind of create a shape with it. So I'm going to let those dry for just a few minutes, let that glue set up, and be ready to go. All right, so with one of the long rectangles, we're going to run a bead of glue right across here to kind of create a fold. Let me get this squeezed out here. There we go. It's okay that the glue is missing in one little spot. It's going to hold just fine. But now we're going to fold this over hot dog style, and we're just going to press down at this bottom part and let it set for just a second. But I'm going to press all the way across, making sure I push it all down, and we're going to be creating our loopy flower. I'm sure it has a fancy name, but that's what I'm calling it. It's the loopy flower. All right, and then if you look, I've got this edge here, which is our folded over edge. This is where we're going to be cutting versus the bottom part. Now we're going to take our scissors and we're just going to start making little snips into it. And about where the glue is where I'm going to stop. On this one, I'm doing those thicker petals. If you saw in the beginning of it, I showed where I had my little skinny ones. These are the thicker ones. I did little skinny ones much closer together. It just creates a different look, and it's kind of personal preference. But we're going to go down the entire length of this, just creating little snips. And again, I'm trying to make my petals about uniform size. Obviously, I'm not measuring. It's just kind of eyeballed. It doesn't have to be perfect. But I am stopping my cut when I get a little bit closer to the edge there. You don't want to go too close to the edge because then you're going to cut your whole flower. Now there's ways to fix it if you do. You just kind of keep gluing pieces together, but we try to avoid it as much as we can. Oops. All right, there we go. Finish getting all of these snipped. That one didn't go quite as far. Of course, I start talking about cutting too far and then I get nervous. Snip that one. And then this one, probably just split this in half. Yeah, a little more. That one was a little smaller. That's okay. My last one will be a little bit smaller, but it'll be the center of my flower. So now that I've got all of these little fringy pieces cut, what I'm going to do is start rolling it. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue to get it started right here on this inside part. And I'm just rolling the flower kind of into itself, into that glue. And get it kind of straightened out. There we go. And I'll hold that in place, and you'll see it's starting to create those little loopy pieces up top there. And now I'm going to run my bead of glue the rest of the way down. There we go. And I'm just going to roll. Now there's different methods on rolling. Sometimes people will kind of tuck it down so that it sort of creates more of a dome shape, or they'll roll it straight across. I tuck just a little bit where I'm pulling my flower pieces as I roll the outside a little bit lower, so it creates sort of a full kind of domed round effect versus just a straight across, but there's no wrong way to do it. Add a little bit more to the end here, make sure I've got a good spot to glue it, and I'll show you what it kind of looks like from the bottom too. These are our little petals. They're so cute. But if you look on the bottom here, you see how the middle part's just a little bit higher than the outside? As I rolled it, I brought it down just a little. But I'll kind of fluff my little petals. I'll hold it in place there, and that's pretty much as complicated as this flower gets. It's super cute and super easy. All right, now we're going to play with our 7-petal flower. So you're going to want all the petals of one color and the smaller felt rectangle to go along with it. These ones kind of look like pepperonis. But so you've got the bottom of the petal and the top of the petal. The pointier end is going to be your top, and the wider round is going to be your bottom. Now, this part might look familiar because our centerpiece is pretty much the same flower we just created. We're going to go ahead and put glue across this bottom section and fold it in half. This one's just going to be a smaller version of it. So a lot of felt flowers, especially if you get to play with these, a lot of them are kind of building the same pieces but mix and matching sections together to create different looks. So just like we did last time, we're going to kind of glue this part down nice and flat. Just get it kind of stuck. And again, we're going to cut along that folded edge and make little snips into it. These ones I'm going to do a bit smaller than what I did on the kind of mustard color flower, just because it's going to be a smaller section. But same thing, I'm going to snip all the way down. We'll speed this part up just a little bit. Don't cut this fast at home. And then we are going to do the same thing. You'll see these ones are a little bit smaller, and it's just going to create that inner fringe piece. But I'm going to start just like I did last time, a little bit of glue along this edge, roll into itself, and then roll the whole thing up. We'll speed through this part too, because it's exactly the same thing. Just rolling it and then kind of fluff the little pieces out, and it's ready to go. And it's so cute, a little tiny piece. But now we're going to work on our petals. So like I said, a lot of these concepts are just building on what we've learned before. We are going to put a little dab of glue in that wider curved edge and pinch it together, just like we did with our green leaves in the very beginning of this. And again, we're just creating some shape with the petals so that's not quite so one-dimensional. I'm using my clamps just to hold them together. Like I said, you could use clothespins, you could even use a straight pin. If you wanted to use hot glue, you wouldn't necessarily have to clamp them because it's going to set up a lot faster, but we're using the Aileys, means no burnt fingers, and I know not everybody has a glue gun. But we're going to go through, we're going to snap all of these together, clamp them so that they've got that little curve to them, and then we'll get them all assembled into a cute little flower. I'll go ahead and speed through this part because it's just rinse and repeat until all of them have that cool little pinch at the bottom. Woohoo, we got them all done, and it's fall, right? All right, we are going to start assembling the rest of this flower by attaching our petals to the underside of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of this glue right in here and kind of put it along that part that is folded. And then I'm going to press it to the underside of here. I'm putting it where that flat section is and kind of up underneath where all the frillies are. I'm going to press it in there, and yes, I'm squishing my flower, but it's okay, it fluffs back up. We're just trying to get a good contact on there. And I'm going to kind of pull my petal out. Now, I like to assemble this one upside down just because it's a little bit easier to see where I'm working with. And so I'm going to run some of this glue along that flat part of this underside of the flower and just start setting my petals next to each other. Now, they do overlap a little bit, which is the way a flower normally would be, and we're going to wrap this all the way around. Each one that I add, I'm adding a little bit more glue and just tucking the next petal in. Again, I'm not worried about squishing this because it can be refluffed, so don't worry about squishing your flowers or anything like that. Felt is very forgiving. I will also say this glue is pretty easy to work with. Now you could go ahead and lay all your petals out in place just to get a feel for how much overlap you want them to have so that it wraps nicely. But this glue does give you some working time, which is the one upside to using this over hot glue. If you set a petal down and realize it's not where you want it to go, it's pretty easy to pop it back off and adjust it in the beginning. Now, of course, I just put that petal in the wrong spot, so we may have to pop a piece off because that one's going to be overlapped in the wrong direction. But let me get this one in place. I might be able to cheat and just tuck it. I want that end of the petal to go over that one. There we go. So that worked too. But yeah, this glue does have some working time when you're first putting pieces together, which is nice. And that is our cute little flower. I can fluff it up and it is ready to be added to our project. All right, and last but not least, we are going to be working with that big circle. It is okay if it's not a perfect circle because we are going to be cutting and trimming all of the edges here. Now I'm going to take my scissors here and I'm going to cut a spiral into my circle. It doesn't have to do this, but to get the same effect that I had, I started off with a very thin amount of space that I was cutting off, and I get progressively wider as I cut into the circle. So I'll kind of, when I lay it down, you'll be able to kind of see that better, but I'm just going to keep cutting all the way into my circle. There's not a perfect measurement. The thinner you cut, the wider your flower will be. The thicker you cut, the less times around we'll wrap it when we get to the last part of this one. This is what's called a rolled flower because, again, sort of like when we did the frilly petaled one, we're going to roll this one to assemble it. I can remember doing paper flowers like this in school, and in school they looked silly, but with this they come out so pretty. And I'm going to leave that frilly towards that middle part. But yeah, if you look, the difference between the thinner part where I started and the thicker part when I got to the end of the flower, it just helps kind of create a shape with your flower. But I'm going to kind of, if I show it this way to you, probably be able to see it easier. Yeah, you can see I've got the thinner here all the way into that thicker section in the middle. So I'm going to start with my thinner side. I'm going to put a little bit of glue here just to get it started. And the middle part does not have to be super perfect. I've got glue now kind of wrapped all around it. And it feels silly in the inside part. You just got to kind of keep working with it. Sort of, if you've ever balled up yarn and getting it started feels silly, nothing feels like it's going right, and then it just starts to build on itself. So I've got my little middle section in here, and I'm going to kind of flop this over so I can add more glue along that bottom edge and just start rolling this one. hold that in place there. And again, because this glue has some decent working time, I can kind of do a bigger section. If you were doing hot glue, you'd probably not want to put quite that much on at a time because it would dry before you got to get to it. And if you look, I'm kind of pinching it between my index and my thumb and just rolling it along as I go and wrapping it. That's usually the easiest way to do it. But I'm going to keep going until I run out of glue from what I just put on there, and then I'll add more glue and keep going. All right, we'll speed this part up a bit because it is just rinse and repeat. Add more glue, keep rolling, and push along as we go. And you'll notice that because I've got that wider petal, now as I get to this middle section, it has kind of a different look to it because it's got that taller part and it sort of sinks into the middle, which is what we want. Now, as I get to this end part, it just kind of is part of it. I'm going to add the glue on this section because I can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to wrap this last petal piece, or petal section, I guess, onto it until I kind of run out of space. And then I'm going to take this final flap piece here. I'm going to put glue all along the bottom of my flower, and this is going to help give it some stability too. But put glue sort of along this section, and I'm just going to wrap this piece onto it right there. You're never going to see this back part, so the fact that it doesn't look super pretty is not a huge deal. But I'm going to press that into my flower, and then I'm going to kind of tug and pull a little bit on the petals just to sort of separate them a little and give it some cool little frillies. The last part, you'll have these two little rectangle pieces like this, and actually you're going to have 4 rectangles because I packed extra colors in there. And I'm just cutting sort of a circle-ish shape. I will show you my circle is not perfect by any means, and you don't have to do this if you don't like this part. It's not necessary for the flower to function. I just thought it looked cute. A little button would be really cute too. But I'm cutting just sort of a little round piece, and I'm going to glue it just there in the center of my flower just to add some more color into it. But literally a little tiny dot of glue is all it's really going to need. I don't know what my camera color keeps doing there, but you get the idea. We'll press that part into there, and that is our little flower. And now we'll start bundling them together and kind of playing around with their placement, tucking the leaves in underneath stuff, and getting it all together. But we're going to go and paint our project first, and then we'll get them all assembled. All right, so we are going to be working on the Hello Autumn side of our pumpkin. I'm going to get these 3D pieces up out of the way, and I am going to be staining the background, so I'm going to use this very first pod. It has our dark walnut stain. It is water-based. It washes off great. Doesn't have sticky, funky smells. But I'm going to use this flat brush to start adding my stain on here. Totally up to you. If you would like to apply with something like a baby wipe or something like that, you can. I just liked using the flat brush because I felt like I could get into the little detailed areas a lot easier. It does take some time, but I enjoyed slowing down and getting this stained really nice. Somehow though, I don't think you guys want to watch me stain the whole thing in slow-mo, so I'm going to speed this part up. The other reason I like the brush is because when I get up close by where the stem is, I have a little bit more control to slow down where I'm staining. Now, I will mention that paint does cover stain great, so you don't need to worry about it, but I liked being able to get to those little corners. All right, now we've got this guy all stained up. I am going to go in and start painting some of these top pieces, and we're going to kind of mix some colors together. At least I did, and I like how it came out. So I'm switching over to the cold foam, which is our cream color on the far end, and I'm going to paint just the stem part of it in cold foam to start. I'm just being careful as I get close to those edges, and I'm trying to stay just where the stem is, but I can promise you it's not perfect up close. But I'm filling all of this part in. Now I am going to take some stain over top of it. I didn't rinse my brush or anything like that. I'm just getting very little stain on the edge, and I'm kind of working it into there. It's turning my color a little bit gray, but it's just going to create a different, cold foam seemed too light for my stem color, but I didn't want it to be exactly the stain. So I'm just kind of playing around with the colors here. But I'm going to brush this over top here and just kind of work it in there. Now you'll get a totally different effect if you let your cold foam dry and then put stain over top of it. And I might do that on the leaves maybe and show you. But this one it's blending more into it because my cold foam is still wet. So work that part into there. Get just a little bit on this edge here. Another option you can do is like this, add some lines in through it. just to create sort of a, I don't know, like the way that a stem looks. Get some of these little details up into here. And looks some kind of like that. Now I'm going to add a little bit of green, sort of finish this part off. Let me get this all shifted around. Add a little bit of this green in here, and that's going to create the stem color that ultimately I want. It's kind of like a sagey green, I guess, but I wanted it to have some texture, and that's why we added some of the stain in there too. I'm going to be using that green for my leaf and my little curly Q piece, and so I didn't want to use the exact same green all the way across, but I think this sort of builds up enough to create a cool look to it. Get the rest of this filled in right along this little crack. I think that's always the hardest part, is where the color ends, so you don't end up with it all smashed into your next section. But just kind of drag this section out here and we should be good. All right, there's my little stem and my stained part. I'm going to let these sections dry and we're going to work on some of our 3D parts now. All right, so I'm going to set a piece of paper in here only because I'm using my fancy background and I don't want to get paint all over it. But we're going to paint our 3D sections. So I'm going to grab one of those little sponges and just dip it lightly into my paint, and I kind of swipe it on the edge to offload some, and then we're going to pounce, pounce, pounce. If you've ever painted a project with me, odds are you've used a makeup wedge, and we love these for our 3D pieces because when you dab along the top of it, it doesn't seep the paint down the side a whole lot. I get a little on the sides, but not very much, and it just helps keep the paint on the face of our project and not get too goopy. I do occasionally get questions about like the little detailed line that's on the leaf. You know, how do you keep paint out of it? One, light coats help a lot, but if some paint gets down into it, I'm not too worried about it either. All right, let's get this little leaf all finished up, and then I'm going to show you guys a trick. So we use lots of makeup wedges, and my way to reuse them is to just snip the ends of it off. A lot of times people are ready to throw them away, and they've got more life in them. So I'll snip that edge off, and I'm going to use this sponge to paint the other color on my lettering. It's great because we go through a lot of sponges at the shop, and this is my way to continue to reuse them and get the most life out of them. I don't send used sponges to anybody else in their kits, but I do have a big bin of them in the shop that we'll reuse. Sometimes for classes, I'll use them, and even sometimes our mini makers will reuse them because they have little itty bitty spots. All right, so our 3D parts are painted. I'm just going to set them on our board here and kind of get them up out of the way. But there is a little bit more I want to play with this leaf. It looks really bright compared to the rest of the colors I'm playing with. So we're going to take a little bit of stain and just kind of brush it on over top of our leaf. Now you'll notice it's not mixing the way that it did when we used the cold foam with the stain because it was still wet. This leaf is already dry, so it's just kind of layering on top of it and darkening the color a little bit, which is exactly what we want. I just want it to kind of mix with everything a little bit better. And that's really as far as it needs to go. That'll lighten up a little bit as the stain dries, but I'm going to come in now and paint over top of my little curly Q here with the green, and we're going to kind of do the same thing. Get the stain over it. I didn't even rinse my brush between the two. It's going to be okay. But I'm going to go in here and just paint this little curly Q all in, trying to make sure that I keep paint primarily on the face of the project and not seeping down the sides. But as soon as I'm done painting this, I'll let it dry for just a second, and now we're going to add our stain on top. Believe it or not, I did let it dry. I just cut it out because watching paint dry is not fun. All right, now I am going to use this Aley's glue to go ahead and glue my lettering and my 3D pieces into place. It still does not take very much glue. I will say this one dries very clear as well. So if you have leftover wood glue, you're welcome to use that, but this Aley's glue is going to stick everything into place just perfect. But now we're going to get to the fun part. We're going to play with our flower pieces, and it is exactly what it sounds like, just playing around. Move them around a little bit, adjust them here and there until you kind of get them the way that you like them. And there's really no wrong way to do it. You can kind of adjust them until you like the way they look. The only thing I'm being mindful of is having them not hang out over the edge. Because this is a double-sided project, I don't want my flowers poking out from the other side. But now it is time to add glue. I finally found an arrangement that I liked. So I'm going to put the glue down in there. Don't be afraid to apply pressure. You can always fluff the petals back up. But I'm just kind of pressing this into place. Get this one pressed in there, and then I'm going to tuck my leaves last because they just kind of sort of tuck up in there. So I'm going to put a little bit along that part and just sort of fill them in the way that leaves would sit. Tuck this guy up under here and one more over on this side. And that is complete. I'm going to adjust them just a hair, and it is done. Now you can add more details if you wanted to. Like I said, I went really simple on the fall side and kept it very classic. And then there's the pumpkin side, or the Halloween side rather, where I definitely got into the little details, added these frillies, added these little dots, and kind of got more playful with it. But have fun with it. It's meant to be a fun project where you can try out all kinds of different things and have two very different looks if you prefer. There you have it. That is our fall side of this kit, our Hello Autumn. If you look, now that you can kind of see them a little backed out, this just kind of has like a sagey green color, and I went with that brighter green and then put that stain over top of it, kind of darkened it just a little bit to kind of add into this darker stained pumpkin. Of course, you can paint these whatever colors make you happy. I just thought this made the flowers really pop on this one. And then of course on the Halloween side we went all in with the fun details, and like I mentioned before, all you really need to do to create these pieces is take your blue flat brush, grab a little bit of color, and just sort of follow kind of where the natural curves of the pumpkin would be. What I like to do though before I paint on my pumpkin itself is when I'm crafting with it, I will take like a piece of paper and kind of just get used to making that motion with the paintbrush. If it's something you're not used to doing, it gave me a little bit more confidence to kind of play around with it. My biggest tip though is paint covers dry paint. Anytime if you paint something and go, ooh, I don't like the way that line looks, or I don't like how that little dot came out, let it dry, paint right over, and you'll never know. So anyway, I hope you guys really enjoyed this project. I love the double-sided stuff just because it can stay out longer, and I'm really, really loving these little felt flowers. They might be my new favorite thing, so I'm sure you guys will see them popping up in projects soon. Thanks, guys.